More than 10 years ago now in 2016, The Witch was released in theaters. Although some people were confused by its spelling, The Vitch, it is pronounced The Witch. The reason it was spelled that way is because Robert Eggers found in pamphlets from the 1600s about witches that it was spelled with two V's. This comes full circle to why Robert Eggers' movies hit so hard and are as good as they are. I grew up on horror and grew a soft spot for B and C grade cult classics, so the first time I saw The Witch, from what I remember, shot for shot, I was consumed. Robert Eggers had somehow captured the pure essence of folk and horror in the same movie. How did he do that? Well, we'll get into that eventually. Eggers went on to make four released movies to date: The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman, and Nosferatu. 2 weeks ago, at the time of writing the script, Eggers released a trailer for his new movie, The Werewolf. Needless to say, I am stoked, and there is a lot to like in the trailer alone. This trailer release got me thinking how it had been a while since I had seen a couple of his movies, so naturally I came up with the idea to watch all four of the movies in the same day. Having annual Lord of the Rings extended edition watches under my belt, I figured this would be a cakewalk. So, of course, for a YouTube video, I had to make it a little more interesting. So, I decided to also make a meal based on each movie. The first problem in planning that I ran into is a lot of the food shown in the movies and from these settings could just be various forms of bread and bowls of mush. With this in mind, I took some liberties. I was not setting accurate in terms of spices and did adapt some cuisine based on resources available to me. I'll get to exactly what I made for each movie throughout the video, but for now the meals in my day were looking something like this. A small breakfast based on The Witch, then I had to run to the gym and grocery store. I figured I should get a workout in if I was going to be sitting around and eating all day. Get the bread started, which would be pulled during The Witch. Watch The Witch. Cook the Lighthouse lunch. Watch The Lighthouse, make the meal for Nosferatu because it had a lot longer of a prep time, and then watch The Northman and make the Northman meal in the middle because it was basically more of a glorified snack. Then I would pull the Nosferatu meal, watch Nosferatu, the end. Pretty simple, right? Well, we'll see. Now, before we get into how the day went, I also decided that following watching the movie, I would do a quick confession booth, kind of like a Love Island or reality show style thing, where I just briefly got out my immediate feelings or thoughts. Lastly, prior to this day, my ranking of how much I enjoyed these movies were: number 1, The Witch; number 2, The Lighthouse; number 3, The Northman; number 4, Nosferatu. I'll elaborate at the end why I felt that way about those movies and if it changed at all. But for now, I'm just going to get started with my day. This is not a review video or anything. These movies have all been out for a while now, and I just wanted to have fun with this. So, hope you enjoy. I was, of course, off of work, so I slept in a little late this day. I needed to get started on the witch breakfast before I ran errands, which is the meal I took the most liberties with. The setting is based on mid-1600s New England, and they are farmers. Eggs are a given, as the characters have chickens in the movie, so I made a meal based on the scene of a bloody egg. Potatoes are a bit of a stretch, as it was around this time that they started arriving to the colonies and were not very common until the 1700s. Shout out Tony Shashers, I put that Creole mix on everything, especially potatoes. And symbolically, I doused the egg mix with Tabasco in light of the bloody egg. So not the most accurate meal, but I really just needed it to get the day started and something in my belly before the gym.
Black Phillip Stiff, you are wicked.
So then I left for the gym and grocery store. I got home much later than expected because of a sort of emergency errand pertaining to my partner's phone not working, but I did eventually get home and got started on the bread. The bread is for a later meal, but our apartment gets very hot when we use the oven in the summer, usually raising up to 6 degrees or so I wanted to do it as early as possible to give the apartment time to cool down before I needed the oven later. It also just made sense in terms of the prep time of the bread raising and all that stuff. This bread is very easy bread to make if you have a cast iron Dutch oven. It's about an hour and a half of prep and then about 45 minutes of baking. In terms of cooking, one thing I also wanted to mention is that we don't really eat pork or buy milk in our house. So for all the recipes using that stuff, there will be substitutes starting in the next meal. So with the sun nice and bright, we started the witch at 2:22. Alright, so The Witch is based in the 1600s New England and follows a family that has been banished from their settlement and forced to make their own life in the wilderness. They build a house and begin farming on land where things quickly go wrong. Personally, for me, and most people, the visual representation is immediately what sticks out. They, of course, were very specific about the cameras they used, and this, coupled with Robert Eggers' meticulous respect for historic authenticity, creates an extremely eerie scope of this Puritan family. In Robert Eggers' words, I wanted it to be a Puritan nightmare. In this movie, Robert Eggers set the standard for what he would continue to go on and repeatedly nail, which is a complete respect for setting. You can tell he does his research, and I think that is what carries these movies so much. There's a large portion of this movie where things happen basically up until the end that could be explained in the natural world. You don't see anything supernatural for most of the movie. Living in the woods as a Puritan family was probably terrifying in many ways and made it easy to let the imagination run, especially as God-fearing people. When you do see something that is supernatural or of the horror genre, it is that much more jarring. The respect for the time carries this movie so much, and having such a small cast of great performances just blows this thing out of the water. And in the end, the evil wins, which is my favorite way for a horror movie to end. With one of the four out of the way, this is my witch confession. Okay, so we just finished The Witch. It's done. So good. I absolutely love this movie. It is still one of my all-time favorite movies. I just really think Robert Eggers laid out the groundwork. And it just, you can tell it's done at such a lower production than some of the stuff he grows to do. And like there's the shot where the tree moves when in the beginning when the baby's kidnapped and it just shakes a little bit. So good. Just amazing. He apparently built the house. Him and whoever else worked on it, they built that house themselves. The shot at the end where uh Thomason's character is walking with Black Phillip in the woods and it's perfectly straight with this like insane eerie tree. Just so good. Still loved it. A bit of an anxiety ride. A lot of things that make me think of my childhood growing up in a religious childhood, religious household. But yeah, I'm really hungry. So the bread came out beautifully, which is amazing, and very excited about that. I'm very hungry. So I'm gonna go get started on this chowder. Let's do it. For the lighthouse, I decided on a chowder inspired by this video. Eating like a lighthouse keeper from the 1800s by Tasting History with Max Miller. I love this guy's videos. If you like cooking and history, you should check his stuff out. The biggest difference is instead of regular bacon, I use turkey bacon, and instead of cow milk, I use soy milk. I was a little worried about this one because we spend most of fall and winter eating various soups, stews, and chowders, and considering it was in the high 90s this day, I wasn't sure if it would really hit. The most interesting thing about this recipe to me was that the binding agent for the chowder was table crackers, which I thought was pretty cool. In addition to the chowder, we had a baguette end, leaning on the stale side, so I cut that up for some chunky crouton toast pieces. I'm not gonna lie, this chowder ended up being so tasty, and the weather didn't stop it from hitting the spot.
Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow! Hark!
Lighthouse is a bizarre masterpiece. Once again, with specific film equipment and historic respect, Robert Eggers, this time accompanied by his brother Max Eggers, proved that he would be making a notable career for himself to say the least.
Starting new. On the run.
Using the 1:19:1 aspect ratio and black and white, The Lighthouse looks and feels like not many other films. Max Eggers had actually originally wrote The Lighthouse as a short story, and Robert worked with him to turn this into a film. William Dafoe plays Thomas Wake, an old school seasoned sailor, and Robert Pattinson plays Ephraim Winslow, the new Wiki, which essentially means lighthouse keeper assistant. As the two bunker down and work on the lighthouse, Thomas Wake proves to be a hard ass, as he has a bum leg and forces Ephraim to do the majority of the labor while he, well, spends every night getting nude in front of the light beacon. The story gets weirder and weirder, touching on many different folklores and mythologies such as mermaids, Prometheus, and a mod podge of classic sailor tales mostly revolving around isolation and madness.
Went mad, he did. Tall tales. What?
It's a thinker. The first time I saw that movie, I definitely left it feeling a lot more like that was a really weird movie. I didn't feel like that. It's definitely a weird movie. Not gonna sit here and say that's not a weird movie, but I felt a lot more confused the first time I watched that for some reason. And I didn't it wasn't really watching it again because I didn't remember anything. Or maybe it is the less of the shock of certain scenes that when you take that away, because it would happen, I'd be like, oh right, there's this and that. Definitely not a movie for kids. Absolutely. God, no. Anyways, it made a lot more sense to me this time. I felt like actually in tune with it and it hit harder. It's good. It's so good. And really at the end of the day, it's so hard to make a good movie based around two characters. Everything has to be good. The writing, the set, the actors, I mean, they killed it. Defoe and Pattinson, I mean, that was just phenomenal performance. Absolutely insane. The monologues are crazy. But yeah, I'm absolutely fried. I'm gonna make coffee and actually get started on the third meal is just almost basically I mean, it's just charcuterie. So I cooked the Nosferatu meal prior to watching the Northman because I wanted it to cook down in the oven while we watched the Northman, and the Northman's meal was pretty easy to throw together and more of a snack. Even though I cooked it earlier, I'll show you it after we go over the Northman. For the Northman meal, I basically made a Scandinavian-inspired cheese plate. Dried fish was the centerpiece, accompanied by some goat cheese, Gouda, raspberries, and the fresh bread. It was pretty straightforward and just a solid snack.
Your fate is set and you cannot escape it.
Okay, so Northman is where Eggers kind of seems to get off the beaten path of what he normally does. Watching these movies consecutively, the first thing I noticed is in the first 10 minutes, there were more people than there were in the two previous movies combined.
He's here. Never.
It felt about as close to a normal movie as I've seen from Eggers. Not in a bad way, it was just apparent that it was not as narrow of a scope as his first two films. It is a revenge film where Amleth, a young Viking prince, is cast out into the world after his uncle betrays his father, the leader of his Viking settlement, and takes his mother as his new wife. Amleth grows up to be a Viking berserker and raids, and pursues his revenge on his uncle. There's a lot of Norse mythology touched on in this, of course, as Sjorn, an Icelandic poet and author, co-wrote this with Eggers. And I learned, actually, that Amleth is an actual Scandinavian legend that was the inspiration for William Shakespeare's Hamlet. I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, it is 10:50. We just finished The Northman. I'm usually going to bed right now, so it's a little hard to think. That was definitely different. That was different immediately. I mean, right off the gate, such a obvious increase in production value. Normal in terms of like where the money went for CGI and stuff. I'm gonna do some research because I'm curious about it. I liked it a lot less than I remember liking it. So there's that. We're gonna eat the Romanian dinner now and do Nosferatu. For the Nosferatu meal, I wanted to do something Romanian as I don't think I've actually had straight up Romanian food. After doing some research, I found that stuffed cabbage slow cooked in tomato sauce is a very common Romanian dish. The cabbage, from what I could tell, is sour cabbage, which essentially means fermented cabbage. Luckily, I had just made a half gallon of sauerkraut the past week, so instead of doing the straight up stuffed cabbage dish, I made a cast iron pan cook of chicken sausage, tomato sauce, potatoes, onion, garlic, sauerkraut, and topped it with sour cream once it was done because I found that that seemed fairly common in Romanian cuisine as well. I dug around for a while to really make sure I made this dish as close to a deconstructed stuffed cabbage bake pan as possible and felt pretty good about what I threw together.
This creature is a force more powerful than evil.
Nosferatu honestly shocked me when it released, given its more so mainstream success. The memeage of Skarsgård's look and sound was inescapable if you were on the internet at the time.
You must bounce on.
Prior to this movie, if people in public saw my tattoo of Nosferatu, they usually say, "Hey, isn't that the guy from SpongeBob?" Now, Nosferatu was once again in the limelight. This movie follows the same plot as the 1922 version of Nosferatu, Nosferatu: A Symphony of Horror, which was an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1897. Eggers' version didn't follow shot for shot or anything, as a 1922 movie is a silent film in about half the length. It is awesome if you haven't seen it. But it still follows the basic gist of Count Orlok is an ancient Romanian that made a pact with the devil to become a vampire. He has had a supernatural spell over the character Ellen for a long time and schemes to move to her city to finally be with her. Her husband just so happens to be the witness of this paperwork, and after being sent to Orlok's castle is made sick by Orlok's feeding, and Orlok leaves him sick to go to her city and brings the plague with him.
He is coming.
Okay, we did it. It's done. I'm so tired. Yeah, it's a little after 1 a.m. That was good. I have a lot of thoughts, but for now, the biggest thing is it was better than I remember. And as an OG Nosferatu fan, my biggest thing is I have a lot of questions about why certain things were different, but that's probably just like choice and logistical matters. But it felt a little more returned to form after watching them all in a row and seeing the way the Northman went. So I'm gonna sit on it because I'm so tired. I don't want to talk anymore. But I'm gonna sit on it. I'm gonna do some research and yeah, come back to all of this. All right. So that ended up being a pretty long day. We started later than I had wished, but that's okay. Stuff happens. The food was all really good. My favorite dish was definitely the Romanian dish. If you're Romanian, let me know how I did. Would your grandma give it a thumbs up or go nowhere near it? The chowder was also really good. We'll definitely be adding that to our fall soups and etc. list. In terms of movies, they definitely all felt more taxing to watching together than I expected. They just are not casual movies by any means and have a lot of heavy themes. So I think it took it out of me a little more than I expected. You could probably tell by the end of it, I was very tired. I was filming less, and I think it showed. In terms of my ranking of enjoyment, The Witch still holds the crown, but The Lighthouse is actually a lot closer to being a competitor for number one than I thought it would be. I really enjoyed it this time. The biggest change is that the Northman and Nosferatu are actually switching places. The Northman isn't a bad movie at all. It was just clear that there was such a large jump in production and more hands on the movie than Eggers' previous movies, and I don't think it did it a lot of favors. Nosferatu was a bit more enjoyable for me to watch this time, as I made sure to really pay attention to the care for detail and the setting and costuming. It still doesn't come close to The Lighthouse or The Witch, which leads me to my last point. The trailer for The Werewolf makes me think that it's a bit of a return to form for Eggers. It is, of course, way too early to tell, but that is my hope. If they maybe found a way to lean into the raw folk vibe of The Witch and combine it with the higher production of Nosferatu, I think it could be his best film yet. Eggers puts an insane amount of work into his films. A lot of the behind the scenes of his movies are free to watch on YouTube, and seeing the amount of work that goes into the stuff like the set building and costumes and just all that type of behind the scenes stuff is really cool. Did you know that they built Count Orlok's castle and the main town they film in Nosferatu? Crazy stuff. All right, that's it this time. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.